I'll be your MC for today's Stolo Treaty Association Youth Forum. I want to thank you all for being here today.
On April 25th, the Youth Treaty Forum was held at the Chiacton Community Center.
Our ancestors have always told us that we've been here since the beginning of time. So we have this long-standing connection to the land and a long-standing obligation that we have to our land and to our resources. We have a long-standing obligation to the teachings of our elders, and we have a long-standing obligation to our future generations as well, what we call Xwexwilmexw staff with.
Basically, you've got Stolo title to the land that still exists. Over the past 150 years, since colonization has happened, folks from England largely moved in when they planted the flag here in 1858 and said this is now British Columbia, part of Canada. What they did was establish their title to the land and ultimately created the Indian Act and attempted to extinguish Aboriginal people's title to the area. It hasn't worked. The Stolo title has never been extinguished.
The Stolo Treaty will identify, define, and implement a range of rights and obligations. Okay, there are going to be rights that we have to our land. There are going to be rights that extend off of the land. We need to maintain our Aboriginal rights and title to the whole territory. So we're talking about the territory from just north of Yale all the way to the mouth of the river. We all know that we have extended family connections throughout the territory, so we need to maintain those Aboriginal rights and titles. So even though in the end we might get a treaty that defines certain tracts of land, we have to look after all of the other rights and obligations that we have to look after the land, to look after the resources as well.
With a carnival theme, the youth participated by playing games and answering treaty-related questions, earning them tickets for the door prize draw.
The treaty will be our launch point for what?
A launch point to free ourselves of restrictions from the government, from Indian Affairs. It's gonna allow us to gain some of our rights and privileges back. It's gonna allow us to make some of our own governance decisions. It's gonna allow our people to live a little bit better and freely.
What will a successful treaty mean for the Essex?
I gotta look for it. It will result in tremendous changes in the way we currently live.
Exactly. A successful treaty will be a factor of tremendous change for the better.
Okay, what opportunity does treaty bring?
To have our own self-government.
Bingo.
Yes.
Okay, what is the Indian Act?
It's a piece of legislation passed by the government.
Yeah. Piece of legislation. Bingo. Okay. Under the Indian Act, the government has control over what with respect to Indians? We just talked about a bunch of things that they get to decide that you can't do without
They have
permission.
control over?
Yeah.
Oh, like what they used to? Like vote?
Even now, remember we said today, even today, they have control over what?
Our wills.
Exactly.
Our wills.
1-4.
What is treaty going to get us?
The ability to like self-govern ourselves and the opportunity to like choose our own resources and keep them.
Then why is your involvement in treaty making so important?
For the future.
There we go.
Awesome. Good job.
How will treaty change the way we live today?
I think that like it's gonna change like our grandchildren and our children because we're not gonna be controlled by the government or anything. We're not gonna be controlled by Indian affairs.
Bingo.
We're working on the treaty and we're getting really close, I think, to an agreement in principle. I would think that maybe in 5 or 6 years, we'd be ready to have an agreement to vote on, I'm hoping. And some of you are probably already able to vote. By that time, you'll be the people who will vote on the treaty, right? You're going to be the ones who are going to have to decide, do we like this treaty? Does it help us? Where is this going to make my life and the life of my children better?
That's why it's so important that the treaty that we negotiate withstands the test of time, that we get an adequate land base, an adequate financial agreement, we get adequate governance controls, in order to take care of the future. That's why the economic development part of our agreement is very critical, is that at the end of the day, we have invested enough to sustain us into the future. If the treaty is only going to be good today, and you're going to be bankrupt in 1 to 5 years, it's not worth getting into. It brings you back to the question is, why would you expect this government to do the right thing overnight, have an epiphany and say, listen, you know what, we've been absolutely mean to the First Nations, let's correct that. Not going to happen. Never going to happen. Whatever is going to happen that's going to improve your life is going to happen because of you and what you do. And so it's very important that you start to exercise your rights, that you exercise your traditions and your practice. That's what makes you different than other people, is the fact that you have the longhouse, that you have the winter dance, that you have, you know, the sweat lodges, and that you have the language. All these things are important. It makes you different.
I learned about the process that you have to go through in the legal system to get this sort of thing approved, and how unfortunately convoluted it is.
To get the treaty that they want, it's taking a very long time, and it's going to take a long time to come before it's actually all set.
Our youth today, like for me, for example, and my kids, if I have kids and grandchildren and stuff like that, will be able to live in a healthy environment without the government just controlling our lives.
I learned that the Indian Act isn't exactly the greatest thing because the government has control over like everything.
I think it's good for the First Nation culture because it helps us with our reserves and gets us land and opportunities.